most horror movies don't get more than 55%, especially with like Blumhouse movies in particular, which just crank out a new horror movie each week. And it's just like, oh, okay, here's Unfriended 21. Like, great. Don't care. Welcome back, gang, to the Complete Guide to Horror podcast. Today, we're talking Eden Lake, the 2008 film in which nursery school teacher Jenny Greengrass and her boyfriend Steve Taylor journey to a remote lake in the wooded English countryside with lethal consequences.
Why don't we just find another spot?
I'm not going to be bullied away by a bunch of 12-year-olds. Hey, guys, can you turn your sounds down, please?
On here, mate.
And what are you looking at? Are you looking at my tits? Fucking jog on.
Steve, where's the beach bag?
It's got the car keys in it.
This film follows the same vein of invasion thrillers, such as your typical, The Strangers Prey at Night, Funny Games, the remake with Naomi Watts, The Last House on the Left, and I Spit on Your Grave. Now, I got to admit, I watched this for the first time just a couple of nights ago while I was setting up furniture. It left me with a very unsettled, sour taste, mostly towards the ending of the movie, but even throughout, I felt a lot of suspension. Fucking hell. I felt a lot of suspense. I felt a lot of not anxiety, just like general unease. But I would say that I did like that it took its approach, on hoodlums and like that fear in Britain of like gang warfare and whatnot to like this balls to the wall level. But also the fact that I think this is one of those rare movies where you can actually see the characters trying to survive, as opposed to being like, no, help me, I'm going to walk at a glacial pace away from like someone running with a chainsaw. But no, I was still pretty entertained, but in saying that, I don't think I'll ever watch this movie again because I really fucking hated that ending, but I'll get into that later on.
I think you're a real piece of shit.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
BP, as this is your pick of the month, we'll start with you. So what are your overall thoughts?
Yeah, well, this is like will be up there as one of my favorite movies I've seen. I think when I watched it the first time, it would have been back in the day, shout out to Video Easy, and I just got it as like a rental, like a new release, and watched it, and I just liked it. So yeah, I just think the whole approach, as you said, Justin, I think the whole feeling in the movie, when I watch it, is you just feel uncomfortable. It's awkward. It's quite realistic in a lot of sections, particularly at the start of the movie. Just like the scenes of like going to the bar, bumping into the kid, like the interaction, like the mum hitting the kid in the face when they're outside having the beer.
Yeah.
Little things like that, it's so uncomfortable because that's like me on the daily. And if you look at someone the wrong way, they're like, what are you looking at? You don't have children. You wouldn't know what it's like. It's like, I don't need to know what it's like to have children to not hit your kid in the face.
You are hit. Game over.
Sorry. Maybe this is what it'll be like after the apocalypse, wandering around depressed, shooting children for fun.
So I think it was quite honest in that approach, and it was pretty quick to get into it, which I appreciated. And it was like a simple plot, a bit of a generic plot, I guess. I mean, being done, I guess, in different sort of circumstances, it's the same sort of deal. And as you said, it deals with, issues around broken Britain, which is what kept coming up when I looked up about it. And it's interesting because this time around I had the subtitles on when I was watching it, and I never realized, but when they're driving to the lake, the radio station that's like playing in the background is talking about broken Britain and kids and all that sort of stuff. So it's interesting, they're kind of like subtly jabbing it in there, even at the start.
I'm Jack English, and this 4th of July, celebrate our independence with the most American thing you can do.
telling the British to shove it up their ass.
And it's one of those movies it reminded me, particularly at the end of the movie, reminded me of The Descent. You're rooting for the character to like get out of there, and you're just like hoping for God that she can just drive, just get out of there. But overall, I really like the movie. I just think, like I said, a lot of suspense. Pretty generic, like with the acting, but the main character, Jenny, she pulls it off really well. And that ending, it's one of those ones that still like, I guess, haunts me in a way. It's very, it's kind of like, it's kind of quite emotional. There's this scene as well where the little boy gets burnt alive, and there's those screams, and it's just, very, like, it's a nerd. So I just think they do a really well interpretation of, running into trouble at the beach, and then it just escalates from there. And I think it's a bit of like a slow burn. I think it's a pretty good movie, and I still enjoy watching it.
Yeah. That scene with the kid on fire, I was just like, they won't kill a kid. Like, I had known just a little bit about the movie, about how, like, very insane it is. And I was like, they're not going to kill the kid. They only do that in, like, very specific movies. And then I was like, holy shit. Like, for me, anything to do with fire, I generally have a fear of. So when they set the kid on fire, I was like, oh, okay, no one's safe. It's going to be very, I was also a little bit, like, when I say disappointed, not with the movie, but with the character. Like, his name was Adam, like the first person they run into, and then he betrays them by saying, like, oh, they're here. I was like, how dare you? You were supposed to be one of the good people. Well, in my mind at least, but...
Shit. Oh, shit. Okay, you want some, do you? Do you want a taste of my steel?
Coop, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I love this movie. I've seen this movie several times, and I've shown people this that hadn't seen it before. It's one of those movies that, like, if they haven't seen it and they're into sort of like horror movies or sort of, as BP said, kind of uncomfortable movies that kind of push the envelope a little bit.
Why don't we tie him up in the bath?
Guess we could tie him up in the bath, but might feel like we'd crossed a bit of a line.
Why don't we burn him with cigarettes?
I feel like it's one of those movies, and it does it quite well. It's really well paced, and you're like, the whole time you're just like, in this situation, and especially the fact that it's it's sort of younger kids or like teenagers, and age appropriate actors for the most part in this as well. Jack O'Connell does a really good job in this. This was actually the first thing I'd seen him in. I saw him in, I saw this before I saw Skins. He's in Skins season 3 and 4.
This is cooking.
I'm a fucking waste of space. I'm just a stupid kid. I've got no sense. Criminal.
And the whole time I was watching Skins, I was like, nah, fuck this guy. He's going to like kill a kid or something. He's just, so fucking cold in this movie. What's the actor's name that plays Jenny? Because she does a fantastic... Kelly Riley is really good in this, and you just feel so bad for her the whole time. And there's just so many parts of this movie that up the ante on that feeling uncomfortable, whether it's the one of the teenagers feels bad and it looks like he's almost going to help her, but she's gripping that glass and she turns around and she stabs him in the neck because she's just been, she's in survival mode, and it's like the part with the kid, the ending. I know, Justin, you mentioned you're going to go on a rant on it. I'm not too sure if it's going to be positive or negative. I absolutely love this ending. The fact that they give you that feeling of like she's gotten away when she gets in the car, she drives and she runs that girl down, one of the ones that's been chasing after her. She's like, fuck it, I've got to get out of here, and she kills her. And then when you see that dog bowl and it's like, oh fuck, this is them and this is the reason, and it's just then she's just stuck in there and they're pounding on the door and the voices are getting louder and louder. And that is just such a harrowing scene of helplessness after everything that you've just watched. And it's just gripping, all the little bits of gore. And it's always sort of little bits of gore in this, like with the cutting and when she steps on the
spike thing.
That rusty spike thing. It's just, it's kind of that kind of pain in this movie. And it's just, it really pushes the envelope on that. And I think it does a really good job. And it's, definitely up there in one of my favorite movies for sure.
Jeremy, there are many things I would do to help you, but digging a hole in the wintry earth with my bare hands so that you can bury the corpse of a dog you killed is not one of them.
Yeah, I agree with Coop. One thing I was going to say is that they don't push on the blood as much as you think they would, and I don't think that's a bad thing. There's a scene particularly where Brett, who Jack O'Connell plays, is punching the kid, and you don't ever actually see a shot of the face, and he's kicking it, punching it, but even that sort of they're doing just make you feel so uncomfortable because you're just thinking his face is completely bludgeoned to death at this point. I was going to say, I've never felt so satisfied watching a movie as I had when she just floored it and hit the girl when she's on the road. And I was just like, get her. Like, the whole time she's just there, one hand in the jumper, the other hand with the phone out, just filming everything. And then even at the start, it's sort of like, she makes the remark about, like, you're looking at my fist and that's my bitch. And I just, from the get-go.
And egging them on to sort of fucking, like, up the ante whenever shit's fucked as well.
Yeah. But the ending I just find like it's just it's a nightmare. You think you'd be having a dream, and she's on the lounge, and there is a shot that she's looking at one of those ladies. I think it's the lady from the diner that serves them. I think she's at the party because she's looking at her. And I think she's the same lady that served them. And then when the guy said, and then she's like, not my kids wouldn't do that. And it was really awkward at the diner.
Take a knife to him. I'm just talking Swiss Army. Cut one up. What do you say to that?
I say, let's definitely not do that.
Forget the knife. Just get one of them down on the floor, strip him, paint his arsehole from point blank range. What do you say?
I'd say you've moved from attempted murder to violent sexual assault, which is probably technically moving in the, quote, right direction.
And then you just realise she goes to the bathroom, and then you just see those glass tiles, and I'm just like, oh god, she's not going to get out at this point. And then you could just hear the crying, and then the door, and then like it's up to the viewer as to what happens. I just presume she gets bashed to death. That's how I take it. Or raped and then bashed. I don't know what it is, but I
always just assumed she ended up getting killed, and then because they're all sort of in it together, we've got to get rid of the body and we just won't talk about this anymore. We've got to look after our kids, and that's just that mentality of just like, we just look after our own no matter how fucked up it is. And it's it's very awkward viewing, but I enjoy it. It's something, if anyone that wants to watch a horror movie that's not really into them, I would probably point them to this movie as a sort of starting guide.
No, same here. Like, for me, I felt like it was the right amount of tension throughout the entire movie itself. So when that ending does happen, so I both like and hate this ending. For me, I only hate it because I can only equate it to something like a really bitter aftertaste. Like, it does stay with you and you're like, ugh, Jesus, I don't know. Maybe I would have felt better if it was a happier ending, but at the same time, I don't think, considering the themes about this movie of like broken Britain and the hoodlums and like, teenage gangs and everything, if it was a happy ending, I thought, why the hell did I watch this movie for then? If it was just going to be the same like Hollywood ending. And that's one thing I will give credit to British and Australian film in particular, is that they don't hold back from having like a real nasty ending. Likewise, same with A24 with Hereditary, Midsummer by Ari Aster. So for me, like, it's simultaneously my favorite part of the movie and also my least favorite. But I would say my favorite part of the movie overall was that instead of it just touching lightly on certain things, they really went in on it. And it was like the entire atmosphere was everything to do with color grading. It's everything to do with even just like the conversations between Jenny and her husband. I was like, all right, I know this is a very high concept horror, and, you know, it's going to lead to either something really great to say like, you know, good overcomes evil. We shouldn't worry about things like this because everyone's fine. But having that realistic aspect that, holy fuck, kid gets set on fire. You know, both Steve and Jenny die in the end. Well, it's assumed that Jenny dies. That, you know, it's also representative of the fact that these things happen to people in real life. You know, you turn on the news, there's always like another person being murdered, raped, another couple getting killed, or elderly people being bashed and like having their money stolen and everything. And it's like, I'm glad that it didn't hold back. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate there's like chemistry between her and her partner in the movie. It's convincing enough for me that it's not forced with just, you know, two actors put together. There's even that shot at the start where she's in the classroom and they walk out, and she has a shot of her looking back in the classroom before she gets picked up. She's kind of like, she must love a job, love kids. So I guess that's a nice touch at the start of the movie. It sort of makes sense later on.
Yeah. And just to give a little bit of like behind the scenes into filmmaking world and everything. So back when I used to work in like short films and like music videos and all that stuff, you could have two really strong actors who are perfect for the roles, but if they have no chemistry, you have to get rid of them both. Or you have to choose which one do you get rid of to try and do like another chemistry screen test with like other actors. I mean, there's been reports with, you know, The Notebook, that like lovey-dovey 2004 film with Rachel McAdams, that initially she wasn't supposed to be in it because she didn't want to do two big roles in 1 year, because also that year she was in Mean Girls as Regina George.
Please stop talking.
So it was supposed to be a completely different person, but she and, I'm going to get the name wrong, and I know it's one of the white Ryans of Hollywood, like Ryan Gosling or Ryan something else, but they had no chemistry doing any of the screen tests. So then they replaced her with Rachel McAdams, because during the chemistry test, they actually thought they were dating in real life. And then, you know, no, they weren't actually. They were never together. But it's just interesting that, you know, you do have to have the right chemistry, especially when the characters are in relationships. Likewise, maybe our British listeners might feel different because, you know, they'd better understand the intricacies of like British language and British culture and how people interact over there compared to like Australian people. But I felt it was like a very easy to understand British film in the sense that, you know, there were no like Cockney accents like, oh, bloody hell, mate. Like none of that shit. There was no like anything to say that this was like Americanized or Australianized or, you know, but I really appreciate a well-made film. So everything with this, the writing, the casting, the acting, the color grading, the editing, I was a big fan of it. But at the same time, I'm like, I wish it had a different ending, but then if it had a different ending, it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, I think the ending was needed, and I think it's blunt and it's straight to the point, and that's what I think it's a good ending. That's unfortunately not all horror movies have good endings, as you know. Some do, some don't. I mean,
is this what it's come to?
That's what I like about British horror films. There's very niche ones that are there that aren't very popular, and this one I consider sort of like a sleeper, sort of just like an unknown one. Really, no one. I mean, I just got it because I saw it at Video Easy, but otherwise I wouldn't have heard about it.
Oh, that is great.
I don't think this was one I'd heard of. I think this was just like one of my 7 weeklies for $7. Civic Video Tormina, baby.
Represent.
Yeah.
Your local Civic Video store.
It's funny you bring up Video Easy, because I can remember going through the horror section at Video Easy and seeing like Eden Lake, and I think it was Antichrist, some movie with Misha Barton in it that was supposed to be a horror, but I never actually checked it out. And it was like
the nerd one.
Yeah, I think that's it. And there's like all these other horror movies, but for some reason I never picked up Eden Lake.
Yeah.
I wish I did before, because I feel like 16-year-old me would have appreciated this movie and really gotten into it a lot more than 29-year-old me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just find as I get older, I'm just like, ew, this has too much blood. Ew, I didn't like that ending. Ew, this made me uncomfortable. Whereas like 16-year-old me would have been like, yes, let's go. But
there's another British horror film which I was gonna down the track we do it. I might request it. It's called Infested. I don't know if anyone's seen that movie.
Sounds familiar.
What's
I know Fear with Mark Wahlberg.
And they're driving to a hotel lodge in the countryside and they get lost and like the signs keep changing. It's very, not maybe a little bit like Eden Lake, but very kind of claustrophobic in a way. It's like two people in a car and they're trying to find this place that's getting darker and darker. But yeah, that's also a good one, and I appreciate the UK horror. Or British horror.
Check that out.
That sounds very similar to, there's a movie called Dead End, which was released in 2003. It's got Lin Shaye in it, who's the main psychic person in Insidious.
Yeah.
It's this family on a road trip through the night, and they keep going around in circles. They see some like real weird shit that's happening, but all of them die one by one on this road trip. And then like there's a really great ending to that one. So we'll have to do that movie down the track. But
yeah.
Like, would you say, BP, that the concept of Eden Lake was like your favorite part of the movie, or did you have like a particular favorite scene? Or
I think my favorite scene obviously would be the triumph that she escaped before the reality that she didn't actually escape, because like I said, there's not a lot of horror movies out there that you'll this is one of the rare ones that gets you rooting for the character to actually get out of there and survive. So that would be my favorite scene. And then, just like I said, her gunning down the girl, and I was like, before it, I don't stop.
Yeah.
And I just love it, like deer in headlights. I'm just like, get up, go faster. And I think it's just the general tone of how uncomfortable at times it is, and not necessarily awkward. It's quite realistic. I think that's what I appreciate about this film, that they went sort of straight in. Like I said, the opening scenes are quite confronting and realistic. And as we said earlier, like there's not much blood in it. It doesn't really need to be a lot of blood. Like it's convincing enough in the way that it's shot and the angles that are shown. But I think, convincing, and I just find it a rewatchable movie. It has a high replay value to me personally.
I done the downloading, and then I done a wank.
I feel like in terms of replay value, now that I've seen the ending, I know that I can go back and rewatch it again. Like it's not something that instills fear. Let me rewind. It's not something that instills fear into me like some other movies we've discussed on this podcast. But yeah, I feel like if I watch it a second time, I might actually appreciate it more, because I feel like the same tension will be there, the same suspense will be there. I'll get the same feeling of unease, but I know what to expect. Whereas the certain parts I knew about this movie, I knew about it except for the ending. So that hit me like a truck.
A reminder of what can happen if you're not careful.
I would agree with BP that that triumphant moment as she, runs that girl over, and you're like, yes, she's actually gotten away after all this bullshit. And it just, I just think that adds just so much to that ending. But overall, I just think this is a really good movie. So not really one particular favorite part. I just think it was just executed extremely well. I don't really have much negative to say about this movie, other than, of course, it makes you uncomfortable. But I feel like that's kind of the point. And it's obviously not for everybody. If people aren't into those kind of movies and being like, then it's not, it's not for you. But for anyone into those kind of movies and want that sort of kind of gripping reality of something like this, then it's a very, very good watch.
The bad thing. That was the bad thing.
I do think it's a movie that needs to be seen as well. Not necessarily to instill fear into people per se, but I think sometimes we get bombarded by too much news that everything's just kind of like, oh yeah, another school shooting, oh yeah, another virus, yeah, another this. But movies like this really help reinforce that, like, shit, this could happen to anyone. Same way that The Strangers, like there's that line where they're like, why are you doing this to us? And they say, because you were home. And it's like, fuck that, he's creepy. And like, I don't want to fucking hear that. But, you know, it does its job. It does its purpose. I've already mentioned that the ending for me is like my least favorite, but also simultaneously my favorite part of the movie because it really drives that message home. But I'd say overall, I don't have like a hugely unfavorite part. I felt like everything production-wise was great. The storyline was great. The scenes were great. Maybe the kid didn't have to be burned alive so horrifically, but at the same time, that's the whole premise of this movie. And what I really like about it too is the fact that, you know, the DVD cover for this movie, you're just like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, nice looking girl avoiding being captured and stuff, but it's actually so much more. So I like that surprise aspect. I don't really have anything negative to say. BP, did you have any least favorite parts of the movie?
No, I can't really pick anything. And the one thing when you were saying that I'm sort of thinking about is during the movie, obviously during movies you go, why do they do that? Or why did she do that? I think given what happens, there's not much she can do. Like she's literally trying to just find an escape. And she's trying to find a way out. And there's no sort of indication, there's nothing for her to really guide her out. Except, you know, she has that phone that may work. But apart from that, that's kind of good in that way because it's not like, why did she do that? Why did she go that way? I kind of appreciate that it was sort of like, there's a shot where I think it's where before she steps on the spike and they do like a panning shot where she comes to like sort of three paths and she's sort of looking around and doesn't sort of know what way to go. And I'm sort of looking at it as well going, I wouldn't know which way to go. Do I follow the power line? Or, you know, until she gets the map. But up till then, it's sort of good because you're sort of like, well, like, I guess you just have to, you're on the run, you're trying to escape. And so where do you go? Where do you hide? Do you stay in the bush? You know? So, no, I can't think of anything negative. I think they just do everything quite well. And the execution is really good as well. It's a film that's hard to fault, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think you said this before, BP, that it's like it's like a hidden gem, like it's an underrated classic in a sense. I think it's not very well known. Maybe that's just like the lack of marketing, maybe it's the lack of copies that were produced and sent out way back 14 years ago when it was first released, but I wouldn't be surprised if this has like a bit of a cult following or a bit of a, you know, if you posted about this movie on Reddit, people would flood the comments being like, oh, I love this movie. This is an underrated classic. Whereas, you know, if you posted a different, more popular movie, it's a very, you know, you get the mixed fan reaction like, oh, this is the greatest horror movie of all time, or this was a big piece of shit. I feel like this one would be overwhelmingly positive. Likewise, on IMDb and Wikipedia, it states that it has 80% positive critical reception.
Subhan, I love you. Don't leave me.
He's not all he's cracked up to be. Who's the really cool one? You should look a bit deeper before you go sucking someone off next time.
I feel like the only way this movie would come up in a conversation with someone about horror movies is if you were talking about British horror movies. I don't, unless someone sort of said maybe what's your favourite horror movie, it may come up in conversation, but I don't see this movie coming up as a talking point at all, unless I was talking maybe about British horror movies and going like, have you seen this, this, and this? But like, if I just met you, Justin, I'd probably be talking about Saw or Scream, and that's probably what we would talk about. And then maybe like a year down the track, would be like, oh, have you seen, you know, It? And then
that's an interesting point because like it's not a horror movie, but it's not a traditional horror movie in any sense. There's not a killer. There's it's weird. It's an oddball movie, but I feel like that works in its favor, and that's what's so good about it.
Yep, let's face it, we're all falling apart piece by piece. Doesn't matter if you're single or in a couple. You are going to die.
I feel like I know the answer already, but Coop, did you have any like least favorite parts of the movie at all?
No, I'm with BP. I can't really fault the movie at all. Michael Fassbender is a wife-beating bastard, but otherwise it's got nothing to do with the movie, so nothing about the movie itself.
I was about to interrupt before because I was trying to remember who it was, and then I realized it was Michael Fassbender, and I was like, how the fuck did I forget it was him? The entire time I was watching the movie, I was like, who is he? I know him from somewhere. I should know him. He's a very popular actor. Then I was like, that's right. Well, EP, Coop, thank you both for joining me again today.
Thank you.
Lovely as always.
Thank you. You are both way too kind to me. Listeners, in our next episode, we discuss The Lair of the White Worm, one of the most camp, most avant-garde, most downright entertaining movies of all time. Trust me, if you haven't seen this, you have to watch it.
From the director of Altered States and the creator of Dracula, a new movie of venom and vengeance. Ken Russell's The Lair of the White Worm.
I'm famished. Should we stop on the way for a bite?
Watch out for your ass.
Feel free to subscribe, like, comment, tip, all that jazz. If you hated our episode, see you at Eden Lake, bitch.